So, here again, Tony Nwachukwu in the hot seat. MoXFM. I'm joined by the wonderful Andrea Parker. Give it up for Andrea. Wonderful. And before we start, we thought we would kick off this session with playing the track in question.
I don't know which version. That's what I said to you, it's whatever version. Sorry, there's like 7 different versions.
Well, let's find out which version it is.
I don't know whether you want to do one or not.
No, we'll do my one afterwards.
I hate listening to my own music.
Wonderful.
That was a long time ago.
It was a while ago, which we're going to talk about. So prior to being signed to Mowax, well, first of all, you grew up in Kent, right?
Yes.
From Kent to London,
Yep.
working in Fat City.
Fat Cat.
Fat Cat, sorry.
Yep.
Getting some grounding there. Again, only girl in a record shop kind of scenario. And from there, you went on to meet David Morley.
Yep.
And promptly signed to Apollo, RNS.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep.
Tell us about those early days of Andrea Parker.
Yeah, I was always collecting records, and so ended up working at Fat Cat because I was probably in there so much. And then I decided to also collect BBC sort of and records, which I've got about 6,000 of now. So I would get
These are sound effects and libraries,
sound effects, library music, and would just mess around at home or on the turntables when Fat Cat used to close and make one track out of all of the samples. So I'd have percussion going around on one, weird strings going around on the other. And then, for some bizarre reason, ended up DJing at an Arthur C. Clarke event when a film was on, and then from there started to DJ sort of professionally, by which time I was playing at Lost, and Renat from RNS Records was there. And he said, I'd done an Inky Blackness record, with Alex Knight from Fat Cat and Ian Tregoning, who used to engineer for Yellow. And I was basically playing this particular record, and Renat from RNS said, you should come and meet this guy, David Morley. I'll fly you over, because I was mad about analogue synths. And so I turned up on David's doorstep.
And so, hello.
And we went in to record 2 sandwiches short of a lunchbox.
And you thought that name, you thought that name, right?
And so we did an EP on Apollo, RNS, and one on Infinite Records at the time.
And that was a fantastic grounding. And tell us about the music back then. So it was definitely kind of an electro hybrid with kind of, dark overtones. But
Yeah, I mean, I was really into film scores and weird films. So I was a real sound person. But on the flip side, I was also collecting electro and anything with an 808 boom in it, basically. But I think around then I was into sort of Chicago house, Detroit techno. Working in the shop gave me a really broad scope and variety of different genres of music then. So,
cool. All right. So from the RNS release to meeting James Lavelle, how did that come about?
I was at a stage where I'd sort of sent lots of demos around like you do at the time on tape cassettes. I had just about sort of given up at that time.
Why is that?
I think it was trying to get across I wanted sort of the fat drum machine sort of sound, but mixing it with live strings and vocals. So it was really getting that across. So I went into the strong room and recorded a track with me on vocals and the cello. I don't read music. I just play by ear everything. So I recorded that at the time actually with the Prodigy's engineer back in the day, and I sent this demo off to various labels, and then months later I got a call from James Lavelle asking me to go in for a meeting.
And obviously the demo included Rocking Chair with you, cello and
yeah, it was
top
my
line.
previous stuff, and that was the particular track that he really sort of signed me for.
I mean, I guess playing cello, because as you said, you've grew up playing cello, and you sing yourself. Your voice has been utilised.
I don't really classify
you
myself as a
okay.
singer.
All right. Well, let's say you use your voice.
Yeah,
right?
I actually did sort of start out singing before doing production in the hardcore days, well before Jungle. I just used to turn up, and they used to just speed my voice up then, so it didn't really matter.
So you were the kind of vocal sample of choice then?
Yeah, I used to go in and sing really bad, they used to give me really bad one-liners. And then I got really, really fed up of actually singing over other people's music. So I started to learn the production myself.
Okay, so from James hearing your demo to you signing to Mowax, how did that work?
At the time we got a recording deal, I pretty much blew my whole budget on the rocking chair.
So was that so how did it work for you? Was it a single deal or was it an album deal?
It was an album deal.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an album deal.
Which for Mowax was quite rare because a lot of the time with Mowax artists, you know, you tend to work on a single for single basis, but you're perhaps one of the first artists who were signed directly as an artist for an album deal. You know.
Yeah.
Cool. Based on a demo, which is quite rare nowadays, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I think it was. I think it was quite strange for them because I would obviously play them the rocking chair, and then the next time I would go into their office and play them a demo, and it would be Melodious Thunk and Ball Breaker, which was completely
dark,
different.
beat, bass heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're a woman of contradictions, aren't you, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So rocking chair was heard. It obviously struck a chord. Talk us through from the initial demo. What happened after that? What was the next stages for its development?
The whole thing for me was I'd always really wanted to, if I ever got a deal, I wanted to record with a 40-piece orchestra with really mad electronics and, like I say, lots of kitchen utensils, like what you just heard, basses, like a microphone strapped to the bottom of a car, going through a car wash, which is sort of layered to get some of the bass, bus doors, chopsticks, you name it, is on that record. So we went into James introduced me to Rob Dugan for the second version.
Rob Dugan's producer who wrote Club to Death.
Mm-hmm. And we went into Swan Yard Studios, and we did it all live, basically, that version. He did the string score for it.
So there was no writing process? You literally, what was the writing?
I'd already written the sort of track and had done one cello line. He sort of made it into a much more dramatic piece of music, but a lot of the sounds were still from the original.
And the original sounds, apart from the kitchen utensils, were from your Faithful Art, no?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the track written on? Can you remember? Was it Cubase you were using at the time?
Yes, it was Cubase, yeah.
So
which at that time, the manual was about this big. Now it's like huge. There wasn't much to it then.
So Rob's contribution was embellishing on the original cello line to make a full-blown score.
Yeah, he made it a lot more dramatic and did the string score and brought in a 40-piece orchestra.
Okay. So in terms of the track itself, the lyrics, is there a story behind the lyrics?
I think I only used to write songs when I was feeling really sad. So yeah, I can't really remember back then, to be honest with you. But yeah, I never really sort of talk about what the songs are about. I leave it up to people's own interpretations of it.
I've got my own, which I might share later. So writing with Rob Dugan to then recording the strings with the English Chamber Orchestra, right?
It was the English National Orchestra.
National Orchestra, okay, cool. So where was that? Where were they recorded?
That version was recorded in Swan Yard Studios.
So in terms of putting it all together, Rob booked the orchestra.
Just went in and did it live onto 24 tracks. So it was all done on tape.
And you're very much part of that process as well?
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah, I've always had to have the final say.
So what was it like hearing, what was an initial idea, demo, to hearing it being recorded by a wonderful orchestra?
I think it was amazing for me then, because it was what I'd always dreamed of, was going in a studio and making such a small track into such a huge piece of music, and seeing it all, turn into with a 40-piece orchestra was one of the highlights, definitely.
Is there any kind of significant studio moments that you can think from that then?
When the brass section turned up and I sent them home.
Why'd you send them home?
I'm not really a brass person. They're a weird breed of musicians, so I sent them all down the pub and said, no thanks, mate.
Strictly strings, mate. That's
yeah. Yeah, it was their funny length socks.
So it would have been a whole different track if it had brass on, right? Some woodwind.
Yeah.
Okay. you think they're looking back in retrospect thinking, we could have had it?
No.
Okay, so from Strongman version, what happened after that? After the track was recorded and you'd had a really good quality master, well, what seemed a master at that point.
Well, then it became the single, my first single on Mowax, which then yourself and Major Force West did a remix of. So I think now, like, you have stems that you give to people, don't you, to remix, but we have big reel-to-reel tapes, and you had all the separate parts, all the raw vocals, and I think you used a DR55.
Yeah, we'll talk about our version in a second. But I was curious because I remember the actual, when you actually finished the master, you had lots of issues with the actual mastering process, from what I remember.
Yeah, that's probably because I was singing as moments such as this, so there was a big sibilance thing going on the S's, so we had to keep like redoing it for that reason.
So for
and I think at that time, especially putting it onto vinyl, it was quite rare to be having sort of 808 beats and ARP kicks. It was either one or the other, you know, cutting it with vocals, beats, and strings was sort of three completely separate issues to get onto vinyl at that time.
And to master, obviously.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
So I guess there was issues with the kind of, I guess, the high frequencies of the kick and the kind of noise effect that you've got on the kick. The at moments, quite like...
And we had we had to cut it 9 times as well because of the bottom end. Because I didn't want them to take any bottom end off,
Andrea Parker record with bottom end. There's an issue, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So is that the fact needles were jumping about during the whole mastering process?
As they do. When there's too much on the bass groove, they just bounce across, so yeah.
So how does that work? You know, you got the first test pressings back, wasn't working.
No, we had to just keep going back. 9 cuts it took.
So you basically had to, you know, I guess you had to be quite determined because it's not, you know, it's an expensive process going back and recutting a record.
Yeah, exactly. I think because when you're using analog synths and quite heavy bass tones, you don't want to lose any of that warmth. So it's getting that fine line of getting it onto vinyl and, you know, not taking off too much bottom end.
So record's done, finally. It comes out. How did you feel?
I think by that time I was over it. I've always been one of those people, once a track is out there and it's on vinyl, I never want to listen to it again.
But do you think that perhaps, you know, some of your fans from the RNS records and the Infinite records knew you for a certain sound and certain texture, certain, I guess, music?
Oh, definitely.
By the time Rocking Chair came out, you know, you'd obviously alienated some of your core fans.
Yeah, I think for the techno side of fans from my RNS days, yeah, a lot of them were quite shocked. But then I came straight back in with Melodious Thunk, which was more of an electro 12-inch, so...
So you were like, there you go, take that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly, have some of that.
But of course, I guess you didn't want to be pinned down with being categorized with a certain kind of sound, right?
No, because I'm influenced by so many genres of music. Certainly then I was, you know, listening to electro, hip-hop, a lot of Detroit techno, you know, even a lot of the old Trax records. And so there was a lot of different influences. So I had the side of me that really wanted to do the beat stuff, but then the other side where I was watching a lot of Twin Peaks and like weird sort of string and film scores that, you know, I wanted to do that side as well.
So taking a step back in terms of the writing process, do you think looking back, it was a worthwhile exercise to collaborate with other writers and producers to realise that record?
Yeah, I think especially back then working in those type of studios with amazing like reverbs and reel-to-reels and a tape op and a sort of engineer and, you know, you can sit there and you know, still be a producer, but it was being around all of those, you know, amazing Neve mixing desks and, you know, it was just incredible to have that opportunity, you know, sort of listening back on those monitors and automated desks and, you know, because it gets quite boring just on your own. Now my studio's in the loft, it's, you know, a bit dull.
But, you can see the light every so often, when you get the opportunity to work in big studios.
Yeah.
And have you been to the Strong Room since?
Only for a pint. Now there's a bar there. But no, that was actually probably, one of the most amazing recording studios at that time, for sure. Lots of people were sort of recording there. So, it's amazing to work with those type of engineers because you learn so much about production.
What was the most significant thing about recording, being able to record the strings and see the mixing process? Can you remember if there was anything kind of like really significant that you took from that experience?
No. I think from someone who doesn't read music, I think from actually doing the original piece on just cello, just by ear, and then I used to sample the cello a lot and then play it on the keyboard to sort of do my own sort of really sad scores. So to actually have Rob, sort of write it all and score it is an amazing experience.
And I guess someone who can obviously see things from your perspective, which is obviously very important, That's amazing. So the mixes came in. Did the mixes come out at the same time as the release, or was it sometime later? Do you remember?
The remixes, they came out at the same time, but on separate vinyl. On the first piece of vinyl was the original with Rob Dugan, then the English orchestra on its own without vocals, and the electric chair, which was my version without the strings.
So there's the highly strung version is
just the English orchestra.
Fantastic. And again, I think for me, looking back, particularly when the record came out, it was again refreshing for those of us who'd obviously been inspired by records like Unfinished Sympathy and records that kind of got this electronic classical hybrid thing going on, but looking at it from a beat maker's rhythm focus perspective was so refreshing.
Yeah.
And to get your kind of subtle vocal on the top of it was also, again, fresh.
With lots of reverb.
Lots of reverb. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I remember when you asked...
I needed to learn to I was a bit of a reverb fanatic.
Is that because you like reverb, or you just like...
No, it's because I hate my voice.
Yeah, you like it. And ironically, your vocal's quite prominent on the master version, right? Did you have to fight for that being...
Yeah. That was the only thing I wanted turned down. I wanted more bass and less vocal.
You didn't get away that time, unfortunately.
No.
But it works, right? I think the tenderness of it and I guess the gentleness of it really pays homage to the full picture. That's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's about the mood of a track, isn't it? It was never a happy sort of piece of music. Although, interestingly enough, this was sort of described as a more romantic type string arrangement than the original was really dark.
Okay. Is there a version of that?
There's my original which literally is when I sing behind you. That's where I've got all the knives and sharpening of knives in the background as hi-hat patterns.
And is there a story behind the not using the knives, or is it again just the fact that you had knives around?
Just one of those.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. Anyone got pressing questions right about now? Just in the zone right about. Okay, cool. All right. So why don't we play one of the remixes?
Oh, this one I really hate my vocal. It's because it's your version and it's clean.
Well, I must say that it was, like I said, at the time it was a fantastic opportunity. So let's do a swap. You do that. No, you do that.
I don't know what version it is.
So find the version that we worked on. Hold on.
I've got to do that later.
Yeah. Okay, hopefully this is the right version.
I can't say that. Did you say that?
No, that's not the right version.
You should know. You wrote.
I've just got this on a DAT, mate. Yeah. Nowadays. So to me, it was, what was great about having the opportunity to sit here with you to talk about Rocking Chair was, for me, it took me way back there. And, from hearing the initial master to having the opportunity to remix the track. So it was one of the Moax recordings at the time that was really standout. And the fact that I had a 40-piece orchestra to work with at the remix was me, oh, yes! Yes! And getting the DAT stems, and being the kind of geeky person I was then and still now to a certain extent, the fact that the track was in 6/4, so I had this whole thing.
That was a few people just couldn't get the 6/4 type, which is the rocking chair, because they just couldn't remix it. You're one of the few that actually got it in time.
Well, this is the thing. Okay, for me, it was a fantastic challenge, being able to write a track that was in 6/4, but make it feel like it was 4/4, and we could kind of rock to it and nod the head as if it was a track written in 4/4.
A few of the techno guys couldn't. They were the 4/4. They just tried, but just couldn't do it.
No, it was brilliant, And so back then, I worked the way we used to work. Myself and Charlie used to work at Papa Bear Studios, which was the studio. It was my house basically. In G Street, and then we'll just bat around ideas, and what usually happens is there's like a magic eureka moment. So the eureka moment was the piano sample, which is from a Ramsey Lewis record, and that kind of like set the tone for the beat. And I remember for me, I wanted to almost like still keep the spirit of the original, but kind of explore drums, which is why the drums are a particular way. And I just acquired this British Spring Reverb, which I got from Music and Tape Exchange. So your record was the first remix that I used it, which is why it's very loud in the mix, especially on the snare. But it was brilliant. I was really enjoyed working on the track. And I remember you always being concerned about your vocal. I remember that. So.
Well, it's because we had to send them dry then. So I was trying to always swamp it with reverb, and then you got it's dry.
Yeah. I think the balance is right on the remix.
Yeah, you swamped it with the DR55.
And then, obviously I think for us, again, it's a signature mix where we got this kind of, beats, paid special attention to original, did the kind of Attica slant on a recording, and getting the kind of cuts and, the kind of DJ skills kind of thing in the way that we did back then, So I don't know if you notice, every cut is kind of rocking it in some respect. You got that, right? Yeah, that's it. That's all Charlie's thing, man. So. Yeah, so I was really happy with working on that mix, and it was fantastic to meet you. And the fact that you liked it, and the label liked it was great, So when you heard the mix for the first time, how did you feel?
Oh, I loved your version. It was my favourite version. There was there was a few more sort of versions that didn't work out so well. I think it was just yours and Major Force West, wasn't it, on the 12-inch. That they did
Electric Minds did a. What was the Electric Minds mix?
No. There's just the Electric Chair, which was my mix. But there's only these ones.
Okay. So all the other mixes. What was wrong with the other versions?
I think they were just all completely sort of out of time because of the timing of the track, and I think a lot of people weren't used to working with live strings and tape, so they just couldn't get their head around it.
But I did. Phew. No, it's good. It's fantastic. And it also one of those things where, particularly, making music in the early 90s, is one of those things where, the fact that you've got a 40-piece orchestra in a piece of hardware in your studio, do you know what I mean? That's kind of, it's big,
Yeah.
I've kind of captured, something that's cost a fair amount of money and, expertise.
That's why there was only one 40-piece orchestra on the album. Spent all the money. I had to do the rest of the strings myself from that point on.
There you go. But the recording has been quite lucrative, hasn't it, in terms of your synchronization opportunities. Tell us a little bit about that. So for people who don't know, what is synchronization, and how has that benefited you in ways that
synchronization?
The fact that this record was synchronized to.
But I think it was just all experimenting then with, live strings and drum machines. Getting that sort of balance of syncing it was quite sort of tough at the time.
And when the record came out, and it was used on different, ads, different places.
Well, I always remember one of the head of A&M, who was at Mowax at the time, wasn't particularly pleased with this track. He said it was only good for a heroin advert because it was a bit sad. But yeah, it actually went on lots of a toilet advert in Taiwan. It went on. The Finnish ballet used it for a choreographed piece. Lots of Patrick Moore. So it got used extensively in the film and advertising.
So I guess you're published by Ireland?
No, I was published by Chrysalis.
Chrysalis, okay,
Still
cool.
am.
And was that at the same time you signed to Mowax?
They won't let me go.
Well, you're making them money. All assets,
Yeah.
So that publishing deal was done at the same time as?
Yeah, back then we used to get publishing deals for writing at the same time as a recording deal, and then we had to live off that money.
Oh, did we? Yes, we did.
Yeah.
So you've never had the opportunity to actually perform Rocking Chair, have you?
No, I think it was just too expensive to sort of... It was really difficult with all the analogue synths also to take those out live, because you have to sort of turn them on with a key, wait for them to heat up, and then they're all really heavy, and then you've got the orchestra, which costs a fortune, and and then I would have probably just froze on the stage looking really bored. So no, it never went live.
Would you like the opportunity, if you had the opportunity?
No.
I'm sure a lot of people would like to see.
I don't like being on stage. I prefer being locked in a studio.
Or blowing people's minds with with your 2600 lower tones.
Exactly. It's also really difficult using all of that live, because they're so temperamental. You never really get the same thing sort of out of it, again. So it's really tricky. And I didn't really want to just sit there with a laptop and, not know what to do with myself. Like playing from... Well, actually, we didn't have laptops then, but
the idea of just using some kind of sequencing.
I think if you're going live, you're going live, and that's how I sort of feel about it.
But then you'd have to be centre stage, wouldn't you, singing,
Yeah.
No?
No.
Not at all?
No.
What is it about being, on stage that... I mean, obviously there's...
I just don't like it at all. It's the same as really DJing. I've never really enjoyed the actual experience. I love collecting vinyl. I love music, but I really don't like being on stage. I think for a lot of guys, I know it's the ego, they love it. I just tend to freeze. Actually, I don't. I drink a lot and fall off the stage.
Well, that can usually compensate for a lot of things, so. So I guess, Rocking Chair was, I guess, the early beginnings of the writing Kiss My Art, which was your album that came out in 99. And on 99, on the album, they also featured another version of the
There was the return of the Rocking Chair, which actually I had always wanted to work with Rob Dugan. He did Unfinished Symphony, Massive Attack, and Depeche Mode, Black Sabbath. He's an incredible string arranger. And when he first heard the piece, he like the original version, he felt like there should have been a slightly darker version to capture the mood. So we spent quite a lot of time he's an amazing character. It was a really, really great experience to work with him. So So yeah, we recorded a new version for Kiss My Art, which was the return of the rocking chair.
And that with a 40-piece orchestra?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've done it twice?
Yeah.
Okay. So one budget blown for one recording?
His orchestra wasn't as expensive.
Okay, so you'd learned how to work the numbers and work the deals in that respect. Okay,
of what was left.
And what was different about recording the strings, apart from the score being darker, and a few years later, what was different about the newer version?
It just, for me, personally, it captured the original mood better. I think, as a lot of people have said, the one with the English orchestra was slightly more of a romantic type of score. This one was more of a sort of Russian funeral march, apparently.
Why is it so important to have it so dark?
I just love really sort of dark strings, like, and cellos. It really determines the mood of a track. You know, that's why you have Jaws. It's always, you know, like Twin Peaks, all of these sorts of films have got, I can't pronounce his name, my favourite string. We were talking about this earlier.
You got it right then.
Angelo Badalamenti. Yeah, so listening to a lot of that stuff, you know, like I want, when I hear strings, I want the hairs on my neck to sort of stand up.
And I guess you contrast that with the kind of subtones,
Exactly.
and kind of like, I guess the kind of more kind of a sequenced top line. You know, it's very characteristic. I mean, listening to Kiss My Art, you know, there's a very character. You know, the tracks that have got strings, there's this kind of underlined darkness from the strings. Yeah. Contrast with the kind of percussive of your drums. And I guess, sequence.
Well, it has to go with the lyrical content as well. You know, there's no point in singing that and then having like really happy sort of disco strings on it.
So it works for a lot of people, but not for Andrea Parker. So, I think, is anybody pressing questions right about now? No?
They've all fallen asleep now. We've bored them to tears.
I think it's just mesmerised, mate. I think it's mesmerised. So where you're at now, I mean, you know, Rocket Chair's still pretty much in your life. Still doing, you know, you get kind of decent income from it, I guess, which is, I guess, something you didn't think about when you actually made it, right?
Yeah, it still features on my royalty statement.
There you go. Keeps the mortgage afloat.
Yeah.
I guess you'd love the opportunity, relish the opportunity to work with big orchestras again. Yeah. Is that something that's, you know, in your consciousness?
I don't think I'll have that sort of budget again, but I have just sort of dusted off my cello, so I am sort of going to lock myself in the roof. And I will probably just end up doing it all myself on keyboards and cellos, and I won't be able to get another 40-piece orchestra in. I might just nick a few kids from a college and line them all up, and
you wouldn't
not steal them literally, but I mean, you know.
You'd embrace the opportunity to work with a young orchestra.
Yes, exactly.
And you wouldn't consider using, you know, string libraries at all? String, you know, kind of VST based, or, you know. There's some good sort of sounds out there. Yeah. So you'd consider it. Obviously, it's not. It's not a 40-piece orchestra.
Yeah. I quite enjoy doing string arrangements as well on a keyboard. So. Yeah.
All right. So right about now, you know, all I want to know is, where is that rocking chair?
Funny you should say that, because actually I do have a thing about chairs, and I do have a very nice rocking chair in my house. Okay. Mm-hmm. And
are you perfectly succinct with?
I do really like chairs, sort of designed by architects and such. So yeah. Okay. And big posters of lots of different rocking chairs in my house.
So what are you working on at the moment and currently?
Well, I did actually do an album a couple of years ago, which no one seemed to. Everyone says, "What have you been doing? What have you been doing?" And it was called Private Dreams and Public Nightmares, which was actually the one I was talking to that lady about previously, of Daphne Aram, who founded the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. I was really lucky to go into Goldsmiths College and literally go through all of her sounds and archives, and spent a year basically making an album from those sounds and from my sounds, which then performed actually here and at the Roundhouse. So, but right now I'm working on a Rewire project. It's called Rewire, which is sort of reversing the whole art thing.
What do you mean by that?
Well, obviously, we were already into sleeves. So this time we've got, I'm curating it, we've got 20 visual artists from all over the world, which have done paintings, sculptings and such. And I've chosen some artists, audio artists, to look at the art and interpret it and write a piece of music. So it's going to be in a box set and a book.
That's great. And no orchestras are invited, no?
No, can't afford it.
Not yet. Well, there might be ways. There's ways of doing things. I mean, I think we all had the pleasure of having budgets to hire big orchestras some time ago. Perhaps, as the way things go, there's different ways of doing things. So perhaps it's how you approach it. I'm sure if Andrea Parker asked an orchestra, "Hey, do you want to record some darkness?" I'm sure they'll be up for it. You never know.
You never know.
Cool, all right. Anything that you want to get off your chest?
No, apart from this light on my face, which is rather hot.
So when are you playing next, performing it?
Tonight.
Tonight. Okay. Okay.
I'm DJing at 1 o'clock tonight before Kirk, who was on the panel earlier.
And what should we expect? Or is that obvious by now?
A lot of bass, a lot of noise, bad mixing.
Bit of cello thrown in?
No, just heavy beats.
The thing is, your DJing tends to, cover the kind of electro, the kind of, I guess, the darker, quote-unquote, moodier aspects of, I guess serious. It's more serious. Let's not use the word moody. It's more serious, Have you not considered perhaps, complementing that with some of your kind of more orchestral recordings into your DJ sets? Or that kind of sound?
No.
Or are they two different worlds to you?
Yeah, there's sort of two different worlds in a DJing. I don't particularly think people on the dance floor want to hear a 40-piece ballad.
So you've never had someone come up to you like, "Can you play with a
I have
picture?"
actually had. I did have one bizarre, people in the past where they've just gone and plugged their violin and things into my mixer. I'm like, what are you doing?
They think, so you're singing this yourself,
so someone else has obviously thought of it, just not me.
Nice one. Okay. So if no one's got any pressing questions they want to ask? No?
They're
okay.
all asleep.
Cool. That's all good. Well, you're going to be around for a little bit, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Andrea Parker, thank you very much.
Around till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Nice one. Andrea Parker.
Thank you.